Okay, let's see if this makes any basic logic, common sense. Lack of knowledge is lack of light, which is lack of love, which is lack of truth. I say that because you could use a lot of words in the English language like frustration, anger, words like stupidity. How can anybody be that ignorant? I prefer to use the word simply lack of knowledge, which is lack of light, which is translated through my spirit as compassion. Okay? Sort of like the way that I mentioned it last night, that I've gone, just like I know how many people have been abused on the planet because I measured it. I think I may have mentioned one time when I had a communication to Gaia, the Great Living Spirit, and Mother Earth. I wanted to heal her because I realized how much she is aware of by what she has experienced, by how much abuse has taken place to not only all the children, but everybody on the planet. And I believed within my own heart, within my own star, I have the ability to help heal her and everyone on the planet. Do you believe that you have within your own heart that much love which goes on forever, which is infinite light, which is infinite spirit, which is eternal love, which is unconditional, that we have the ability to do that and heal everybody on the planet? I have always believed that. And I do believe that. I'll always believe that. Which means, and I know this through my own experiences, because when I think about some of the things, for example, the first girl that I got married to when I was 24, as a result of some of the things that she did, in which I experienced an enormous amount of physical, emotional, and spiritual pain, which does what? Lowers the vibrational speed of my energy, which is draining my battery. And she's not even aware of it, but I'm aware of it, and I'm realizing the nature of the communication that caused it. So that's an acknowledgement of how the energy works. It's an acknowledgement of what I knew as a child that was here as a result of what is here, which are parasites. The parasitic nature of the consciousness that is seeking to drain the light, which is going in reverse, which means instead of expanding the light, which is expanding the speed, because the universe is not linear. It's not like it's just a single wave. It bends on the event horizon, and it spins in a vortex. Okay? It's called a T wave, a transverse wave. Now it's going faster, isn't it? That's right. Now your energy is going up, which means your light is going up. Now you're a powerful magnetic light amplifier. Now you're able to heal yourself within yourself. That's what we have to do when we engage in a spiritual war, is we have to have the ability to heal ourselves when we experience all the trauma. So when I go to the Dan Bongino show from time to time, because I'm subscribed to his channel and his newsletter, because he's sort of out, what I call sort of out in front of the tip of the spear on the political side of things, because he self-acknowledges himself as a political person, even though I acknowledge myself as a spiritual being, autonomous unit of consciousness, which is what love is in living spirit. But because he has a large following, he has the ability to reach a lot of people in what he knows to be true on the political side of things. I'm not going to spend the time to sort of, how do I put this, break this down in units of energy consciousness that are experiencing what I call the cause and effect, or all of the bits and bytes of information that we become aware of to sort of put the puzzle and realize how our consciousness is being held captive by something that doesn't serve us because we're choosing to have an interface with it. And that would be mainstream media. So on this particular day's episode, he was breaking down how, in light of all the evidence, which is information that is coming out about Joe Biden and his son, of information that was on the hard drive. Now we're back to what you want to believe. You have the free will right to believe whatever you want to believe. If you don't want to believe that Joe Biden is a pedophile, if you don't want to believe that he's a liar, If you don't want to believe that he's done horrible things, being bribed by the Chinese to carry out what the Chinese are telling him to do because they have evidence on him, and even though that evidence is on the hard drive, okay, whether you believe that is true or not, that's up to you. It's not up to me. It's not up to anybody else. That is an individual, autonomous decision that we all make within our own mind, body, and spirit, isn't it? That's free will. That's our free will right to experience whatever we want to experience. And what we are experiencing is the energy. We are experiencing what that data represents. We are experiencing what the evidence represents, whether we choose to believe or experience what that represents or not. So if we don't want to experience what the evidence is saying Joe Biden is, we don't have to experience that because we choose not to give something like that energy. Because we choose to run at a higher speed than what that is on either side of the spectrum. Okay, which is what it means to be a free spirit, which means my consciousness is not held captive by the belief systems of other people. Because our own journey is our own story. And our own story is a measurement of our own experiences of what we're learning by what we're experiencing. And this is how means testing our experiences and learning how to go faster, in which we're not held captive by another unit of consciousness's belief system. Because everybody is entitled to live their life the way they want to live it, provided they what? Do no harm. Which is back to first law, which is love is a law, because it is the light of living spirit, which is what love is, that frees our mind to be who we are and express ourselves freely in no fear to do that, which means we're not held captive by another unit of consciousness that is trying to express itself in a way in which we hold ourselves captive to that. See? Which are people who are trying to tell us what to think, what to wear, how to drive, what to buy. In other words, Madison Avenue. They make all their money through memory, which means instead of using our state of consciousness to manifest through creative imagination what our own creative imagination can imagine, and when we're doing it at a high rate of speed, then we become the creative artist of the cosmos to create and imagine and thus experience in a single frame what it is we just imagined. So now the others, who are the other artists, where our waves are in harmony because the speed at which we're all experiencing who we all are, we're all creating things and manifesting things together at a frame rate speed that is in peace, harmony, and balance with each other. Which means we're experiencing the highest speed in which the universe is expanding its light. And that means that the universe is going fast. Which means we're not held captive to lower, heavier density. Lower, heavier density is trying to hold our density consciousness captive to what it believes is true. So Dan Bongino was showing all these little clips from CNN. There's no evidence. There's no proof of no evidence. There's no proof of no evidence. There's no proof of no evidence. So you immediately become aware, now that you are listening to the sound and the light that's being recorded in your DNA as you're experiencing what they are saying to us, which is inverted, which means because we know who they are, which are liars, then because they are liars, which means they're going slower in speed, we're recording the slower speed, which is going in reverse, by choosing to engage and listen to CNN. We're recording the reverse or the slower speed in our own DNA timeline, okay, which is why I disconnect from them. I don't want to record or have an interface with something that is going in reverse because I know they're liars. Which is why Donald Trump came right out and said it to everybody. You're fake. You're fake news. You're liars. Okay? So look how many people actually watch CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CBS News, ABC, and Fox, and sit there and give psychic energy to experience what is nothing more than going in reverse, because they're all liars. That's a measurement that we take of people who believe in something that's not true. But that's their free will right to believe in something that's not true. Okay? Now we can prove on the quantum level that all of them are fake, because we can measure what it is they're communicating on the electromagnetic light spectrum. Okay? All you got to do is pull up a DNA sample of one of these people, like, what's his name? The Anderson guy. Anderson Cooper, who was what came out of the, I believe that's another one of the Rockefeller bloodline families, Rothschild, that whole bunch, right? Fear-based consciousness, which is vampiric, because fear is 100 megahertz, which is 100 million hertz. That's tunnel vision. It means that their universe is not expanding, which means their speed is not expanding, which means they run in heavier density, and they're slowing the universe down. So the more of those, why do you think they ran breeding programs? Think about it. If you reproduce as a species, lower density consciousness is being reproduced through cellular memories and genetics, and then those people reproduce with other hybrids, which is lower density consciousness. That explains why just in the last 2.5 generations I've experienced more lower density consciousness that is feeding on my light than was feeding on my light in 1955, 1965, 1975. By around 1980, I realized that those that were still running a higher speed processor of states of awareness, man, you could see that they were increasing the amount of units of consciousness that were running tunnel vision that were feeding on our light, and that's how they do it. They reproduce more parasites. So the more parasites that they reproduce that believe, or how do I put it, don't know the difference between what they are and what they're not, and don't realize that they represent what a lie is what a parasite is, okay, that is feeding on the light, because it's not what love is, because it's in fear of itself. It's in fear of itself because it can't generate any living light. So if it can't generate any living light, then it's going to feed on those that do. And that's what they do. So the only way that they can continue feeding on everybody's light to keep us all captured by lower density consciousness is by getting us to believe that what they say is true when it's false. So they have to invert everything because they run in reverse. That's all your mainstream media. Okay, so for me, historically, I always go back to thinking about, and this is just a footnote in history, at the end of the war, when Germany had already surrendered, the Japanese hadn't. And the Emperor Hirohito had pretty much realized game theory, right? He was going to get nuked. So he has to consider the Japanese people, whether he wants those to experience what it means to suffer an enormous amount of radiation exposure. And anybody that's ever seen any pictures of that, it's not a pleasant experience. Seaweed, that's one of the reasons why, for example, when you go east of the mainland United States, you'll see a lot of Pacific Islanders that eat seaweed. Okay, and there's a reason why that prevents cancer, if you will, from being highly acidic and what have you, which simply means fungus grows in your system, which is what cancer is. It's feeding on you because it's wanting to dispose of you, because it realizes that you're losing your living light. So therefore, if you're losing what it is that you are, the cosmos has a natural way to kick in a garbage disposal, and that's exactly what it is, see? So this is simply lack of knowledge, which is lack of light, because they don't understand how, for example, in nature maintains its balance. So, for example, I could experience that in my own childhood by looking at the difference, and this is where we have the loss and gain of particular species. So when the snake population is up, the hawk population is down. When the hawk population is up, the snake population is down. okay, which is, in the way that I measure it, it's a quantum scale measurement, which is loss of energy, gain of energy. We talk about the life cycle, in the wintertime, things are colder as a result of the cold. Then things go sort of into hibernation mode to protect itself until the sun comes back as a result of the rotation, right? And getting more sun, the warmth goes up. And then we have the springtime, the planting of seeds, we harvest the food. It's all an energy scale between loss and gain, loss of light, loss of light, loss of... And this is how you begin to realize when you start measuring all the different frequencies of all the different species of everything that moves that is self-aware on the planet. You're able to measure in a biosphere the health of the planet between everything that is here on a species level, right? So we know in the archaeology record, the anthropology record, for example, the species that is the most predatory, that's eating up all of the energy that exists there and not leaving any energy left for anything else to survive on, what happens to it? It runs out of energy. And why is that? Because it lives in fear of itself. It lives in fear of losing energy. So if it hasn't learned how to keep in balance with everything else that is energy, that is self-aware, then it's going to go extinct because it simply wasn't able to learn at a rate of speed commensurate with being able to live in harmony and balance with the rest of the cosmos. That's a measurement of its intelligence. That's a measure of its learning. So in other words, that would be a reptilian, a lizard, because all you have to do is look at a lizard in the wild and its mother doesn't give it any love. So that's painful for me. Because we do. So that means a lizard doesn't get to experience love. You would want that lizard to be able to experience love, which is why we give love to everything, all species. So you begin to realize the nature of why it has a perpetual target on the back, why it's a perpetual locust, and why it does everything that it does using technology to hijack everything in order to maintain what it is. It's like, in its mind, it has to be the ultimate predator in order to reproduce and maintain itself and what it's aware of, which is itself, which is a predator, which is a parasite, which is a vampire, which means it's constantly needing to consume energy, because if it doesn't, it becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger parasite to maintain itself, then it's going to keep consuming more of what the light is until we run out of light, which means it's like a whack-a-mole. It's a universe killer. So at some point, when you start making a scalar measurement of this, when you realize the loss and gain is slowing the universe down, we have to solve the problem. So that's why Laniakea is all under operational security. So on a smaller scalar measurement, you're just dealing with a bunch of folks that run a mass media. And I'm thinking of the Japanese in Hirohito. He wanted to get a message out to the Japanese people, which would be the same as President Trump is trying to get a message out to all the people, okay, that I'm draining the swamp, which is draining the lizards, getting rid of the crime families, okay? How could people just not know that? It's because they're programmed. They're not waking up. They can't see it for what it's worth because they don't realize, they're not aware of how it is that they experience what they experience. They can't even acknowledge or translate the universe that they occupy and how it works in such basic, fundamental ways, in the way that light works, the way that love works, as a result of so much trauma and everything else that I mentioned in my videos about species, genetics, hybrids, clones, androids, cyborgs, and ETs wearing skin suit. So it's a big terrarium made up of a lot of different beings that resonate frequencies that are all over the map, the terrain, mapping the terrain. And those are scalar measurements, is mapping the terrain. That's what I was doing as a child, to do a scalar measurement of the loss and the gain that is in here, which is the speed of the learning, when you measure it through the lens of a classroom in a galaxy. Okay, so when I saw Hirohito trying to get that message out to the Japanese people, he was sending his some of his closest confidants, which meant that they had to take down the mass media, okay, which was to commandeer a radio station, take over the radio station. so that that message could get out to the Japanese people. Okay, so they stormed into one of the big mass media stations, radio stations. It was beaming out their message, much like the way in Europe they did it during World War II, but after World War II, against what was known as the Stalin era. Okay, just another big parasite, same family bloodline. Okay, which was called Radio Free Europe. Okay, which is mass media. And so that message needed to get out to the people. Well, essentially, that's what President Trump's trying to do. That's what those that wear MAGA hats and the rest of it are trying to say. Hey, we're trying to restore the honor and the dignity and the love that we have for each other so that we can all thrive in this country. That's essentially the message. So you have mass media, as President Trump said, and of course I've known this forever. Okay, and that is that mass media is used to program people to believe in things that aren't true. It's the carnival barker. So CNN, Anderson Cooper, they're all carnival barkers. Okay, so it's like, how could they not know that these people are lying through their teeth? Because they don't know the difference between what's true and what's not true. And then you say to yourself, well, how's that possible? How could they not know it's true if you have the free will right to believe in whatever you want to believe? Scalar measurements of their energy. Love is what's true, because love is a measurement. It's a speed. So when you're running a high-speed wave, that's a lot of light. And that means it makes it easy to be aware of what the truth is, because that's what love is, that they are not. So you realize that they are used as an asset, as a force multiplier, to program other units of consciousness to believe in something that's not true because they lie. And when people believe in what a lie is, that's insanity. Okay? So love is sanity. Because we don't live in fear of what love is, because we are what love is. So this is a balance in the equation between, much in the same way that when the hawk population is up, the snake population is down. The eagle, the American eagle, the spirit of an eagle, is free to fly. And it can see everything down there, as above, so below. That's why the tribes honor the spirit of an eagle, the spirit in a bear. Okay? Wolf spirit protects the tribes. Everything that is in living spirit, that is in nature, that is living light, which is what love is, which is not binary. It's trinary. So we're not held captive by binary, duality, artificial intelligence. That's what they are. Anyway, have a great day. I love you all.